about to provide us excellent insight is Ben Baby, who covers the Cincinnati Bengals for ESPN.com. My guy is a must-follow on Twitter, especially for anybody down here in South Louisiana who is big fans of the Bengals, obviously with Joey up there and now with Jam, rocking #1 up in Cincinnati.
You can't forget Big T.
Yeah,
Tyler
Thaddeus
Shelvin.
Moss, Tyler Shelvin. I mean, all of them up there, bro.
Let's run it back, dude.
Ben Baby is on Twitter at Ben_baby, so make sure and follow him before we get out of here at 9 a.m. this morning. We welcome him back to the conversation. Ben, good morning. How are you, man?
Hey, Joe. How are y'all doing?
Doing good. The pressing question to everybody down here in South Louisiana, let's go ahead and get this off the top, is did Joey B get veneers in the offseason?
You know, I would have ventured to say yes. I think I'm no dental expert here,
Right.
but looking at the before and after pictures when we saw him from minicamp, I said, yeah, those would definitely look new. And good for him. I think you know, as a starting quarterback in the NFL, you've got to be conscious of your image. And honestly, if you look at the English Premier League over the last couple of years, a lot of the most high-profile players and guys, they've all had their teeth done. So it's interesting to see Joe kind of follow up on that trend. But hey, he's worried about looking good, and I can't blame him.
Has anybody asked him yet? And has anybody gone into the room and actually asked him like in a formal interview?
I don't think we have the stomach for that yet. I think we're gonna ease into that first.
It's just so obvious.
Right. Joe, one more in the last
Your teeth.
Ben Baby joining us here, talking some Cincinnati Bengals. Talk about the buzz, Ben, because everybody down here in Louisiana feels it. I mean, I think, you know, with Drew Brees turning over at quarterback for the Saints and Ja'Marr Chase being drafted to Cincinnati a year after Joe goes there, a lot of people in this part of the world are paying attention to the Cincinnati Bengals and are really excited about next season with Ja'Marr Chase joining Joe up there. What has been the buzz like in that part of the world with the season just a couple of months away?
Yeah, you know, I think people are really excited, especially when you look at the progress Burrow made throughout minicamp in this offseason. I mean, the fact that he was able to do so much in OTAs and yesterday, rolling around, was able to do some 7-on-7 team stuff. You know, still limited, didn't do 11-on-11 team. But by and large, I think everybody is very optimistic and encouraged by what he was able to do, especially inside the building. And the fans have really eaten it up. And I think there's a lot of excitement about what this offense can look like when you talk about Joe Burrow, and then you add in Ja'Marr Chase with the 5th overall pick and add him on to Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins and Joe Mixon. I think there's a lot of weapons on offense. And I think in today's NFL, you have to be able to score at least 30 points a game if you want to win at the highest level. I think the Bengals understand that. I think other teams around the league are also well aware of this. So it's important to have an elite offense, and the Bengals are hoping that this becomes one by the end of the season.
Ben, you mentioned Ja'Marr Chase going 5th overall, and you know that was a very popular pick for LSU fans. How popular was that for Cincinnati fans, knowing that Joe needed some protection, but there was a selection as dynamic as Chase on the board at that point? What was the feeling around the pick?
Yeah, I think for fans it was, if it's good for Joe, it's good for us. I think that's really the impetus. And when Joe said, yeah, you know, I wouldn't mind having Ja'Marr in, and it started to trend that way, and people said, oh, you know, this is what it looks like at LSU. And you got to remember, when you drafted Burrow in the first place, you drafted him with the hopes of this is what it could look like. And you know, when you look at that LSU team and what they did in 2019, that's what you hope you can bring to the Bengals. And Ja'Marr was just another shade of that vision. Was when you saw them connect, when you saw them do what they did in that historic season. You're hoping that they can replicate that success in 2021. And so I think people understandably were a little apprehensive at first about not taking Penei Sewell, but you know, given the Bengals' needs and kind of what they were looking at, it makes sense. And then for them to take Ja'Marr, who they had as their top wide receiver on their board, I think that makes a ton of sense. And, you know, for Burrow to be in the quick game, give him another option, another guy who can create separation quickly and has the capability to make big plays. You know, he's the playmaker the Bengals wanted at that spot.
What is the stability around their offensive line in this offseason? I mean, what is the feeling around that unit going into next season after Joe was banged up like he was in year one?
Yeah, you know, I think there's still going to be a few question marks, but they did some things to fortify that offensive line. They brought in Riley Reef to play right tackle out of Minnesota, a good veteran to have there. The big addition was getting Frank Pollock the new offensive line coach who was previously with the team. I think there's a lot of optimism inside the building and amongst the offensive linemen that Pollock will be a big upgrade over Jim Turner, who was with the team for a couple of years after coming from Texas A&M. And I think that, Pollock is going to – they're hoping that Pollock can really kind of infuse some confidence into those guys and really get that unit better. Then they drafted Jackson Carman in the second round. We saw him repping at right guard yesterday. So by and large, I think they have made some improvements, some tweaks, but is it going to be enough? That's still the big question. And to be honest, I think a lot of that also hinges on Burrow's development. If he can get the ball out quicker, if he can kind of up his reads and kind of work on some things throughout his game as well, I think that'll also help him stay upright.
There's a little bit of a stigma around the Bengals franchise and its history and not really being interested in investing and being a winner. Has Joe Burrow kind of changed their narrative about that? They more invested in the franchise and seeing this thing turn out to be, something that might be a perennial playoff team and a Super Bowl?
It's interesting you mentioned that Burrow changed that because I think that, whether it's a coincidence or not, it's that whenever they started ramping up to draft Joe Burrow, they ended up spending a lot of money on external free agents, which is very atypical for the franchise. You saw the deals they gave to quarterback Trey Waynes, defensive tackle DJ Reader. Then this year they gave it. I had another big deal for former Saints defensive end Trey Hendrickson. And they've been like slowly, ramping up. And I think they're aware of this narrative that they're kind of a cheap franchise, that they don't like to win at the highest level. And to be honest, I think they, when you look at what they did in free agency, that was in 2020, that was before the draft. And for me, it was almost like, there were all those comments during the pre-draft process, especially from former players going, well, we weren't really sure if the Bengals were interested in winning at the highest level. Mike Brown and the family were really wanting to go all in on this. And then they spent all this money kind of almost as to show Joe Burrow, hey, if and when you come here, this is going to be a place that is concerned about winning, that does want to win. So I think that narrative has started to shift a little bit, but, I think now, at this point, the rebuilding process over the last 3 years should be over. It's time for them to push for a playoff berth, and we'll really see kind of where they're at in Zach Taylor's third year, and this is going to be a really pivotal year for the future of the franchise.
Ben, when Joe was here, his senior season, there were stories about him and Joe Brady as like football soulmates. Like the first time they met, they like hugged when they ended the meeting, just because they were on the same plane. They spoke the same terminology. They saw the same things offensively. Zach Taylor and Joe seem to have a very similar relationship when you look at quarterback, head coach / play caller. You're around that relationship a lot more than us. How is that? How is that relationship work day in, day out?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of comfort there on both sides. And I think that the fact that Burrow, last year Zach took a lot of heat as they kind of limped towards the 4-win season, and Zach only had 6 wins in his 2 years. And there were some questions about whether he should come back for year 3. And Burrow was very, very adamant and very vocal about how much he likes Zach. And I think that played a key role in them bringing him back for year 3. And I think that, Zach will be on the hot seat going into this season. Understandably so after 6 wins in 2 years. But Zach, that relationship I think is really strong. And Zach, when you look at him here, he's very flexible. He doesn't really have an ego about him that you would expect for a head coach at any level, much less an NFL head coach. And I think that bodes well for the players. I think for Burrow, his voice is going to be heard. And Zach is willing to listen to players and kind of coaches and say, oh, okay, this is not working. What can we do to fix this? Prime example of that was in 2019. They went to London. They got routed again, and the run game just was not working. So on the plane ride back, they essentially just ripped up the entire run scheme, and they came back, and Joe Mixon finished with 1,000 yards by the end of the year. So it shows that there isn't enough. A lot of coaches, in my opinion, sometimes their stumbling block is they're too self-confident. They have too much of an ego, and they're unwilling to change some of these things that aren't working. And they're just kind of saying my path is going to work, and they just think it's going to play out. And Zach has kind of shown a little flexibility in some things that he's willing to negotiate with and say, these aren't core principles of what our offense should look like or what the team should look like. Some of these things can change if it's for the better of the team, especially with some of the scheme stuff. So I think that has been a positive, something Burrow has appreciated, and I think that relationship is going to be huge if Zach is to stay here past 2021.
Ja'Marr Chase has more swagger at wide receiver than LSU has seen in the last 15 years. It feels like he's one of the best playmakers that college football has seen over the last couple of seasons. How exciting was the pick of Jam, and what is the expectation for the former Biletnikoff winner here in year one?
Yeah, it's going to be, I think, when you come in at the 5th overall pick, the expectations are going to be very high. And I think the expectations are that he ends up being the top receiver on the team. And yesterday we saw a glimpse of that in 7-on-7. I think they had Burrow and Chase linked up for 4 straight completions, and they really just looked like they were on the same page. It's really everything was running smoothly. Joe was, had a lot of good things to say after that session, and I think that you're hoping that Ja'Marr can come out and be this big playmaker that the Bengals have kind of lacked at times. And the Bengals have good receivers. I think theoretically, a lot of fans think this could be one of the best receiving corps in the NFL. I think that there's a potential it could be that, depending on how it all looks once Burrow gets healthy. But, Higgins looked like a wide receiver one at the end of last season. Tyler Boyd, a lot of people believe he's one of the best slot receivers in the NFL. Now you add Ja'Marr Chase in the mix, who's a big body guy who can create separation, and really his skill, especially at LSU, was getting those yards after catch. And for the Bengals running a lot of quick game, running a lot of intermediate passing, there's that possibility when you have a guy like Chase on the field that he can turn a quick slant into a massive gain, if not a touchdown. And I think that's what, the Bengals are going to be banking on. And Jamar's got to help Joe Burrow open up that deep passing attack and get these explosive plays in the passing game that just haven't been there the last couple of years. And I think for this offense to kind of hit the level it needs to, they need those big passing plays.
After the Bengals drafted Burrow from LSU, did you notice a huge uptick in interest from maybe a Southern contingency in Louisiana following the Bengals? And do you think that was part of their maybe idea in drafting Ja'Marr Chase, is to keep the interest level high, just because it's a whole fan base down here that will follow these, like the LSU guys wherever they go in the NFL, and if you build around that, it's almost building like a separate fan base in a different state.
Yeah, I haven't seen this many LSU fans in my mentions since that 2018 Texas A&M game. So it's kind of, it makes me feel like I'm back covering the SEC, and there has been an uptick. You have seen a lot of people from Louisiana, specifically from Baton Rouge, being really invested into what the Bengals are doing. It's almost a LSU North up here now, like you guys mentioned with Ja'Marr, with Joe Burrow, with Thaddeus Moss, with Tyler Shelvin. I mean, you have Brad Crackdorf on staff. I asked Ja'Marr, I said, are y'all going to try to get to play neck at Paul Brown Stadium? And I think that was lost on the entire beat, except for Ja'Marr. So he enjoyed that. But I'm serious. I want to hear some neck. I want to hear some Colin Baton Rouge. I want to hear some, I'm from Louisiana. Like, I need Death Valley now at Paul Brown Stadium. Frankly, it's a much better experience. I still think that a night game in Death Valley is the best experience you're going to find in college football and maybe all of American football. So I will be not opposed to that. But I think that, when they drafted Chase, it wasn't so much to kind of keep the fan base rolling, but it was a sense that they wanted, they felt like that was going to be the pick to produce a winning football team. And right now, Cincinnati is there's a lot of good football fans here. There's a lot of people who have not seen a playoff win since they've been alive, to be quite honest. It's been since 1991. It's been 30 years since they last won a playoff game. So, I think this town is craving a successful franchise, and they're hoping that Burrow and Ja'Marr are the pieces that help unlock that.
Formerly covering the SEC and the Dallas Cowboys for the Dallas Morning News, now on the beat for the Cincinnati Bengals, and doing fantastic work. I'm telling you, if you're down here in South Louisiana, and we are all following the Bengals, and we are all interested in what happens with Cincinnati, Ben Baby is our lifeline. He is the guy that keeps us up with all the information. You got to follow him on Twitter. He is at Ben_Baby. Thank you as always for the time, my friend. We'll be checking in again soon. Enjoy the summer.
Hey, sounds good. Y'all take care.
All right, man. See you.